This is a lecture for the teaching modules of the One Health Regional Network, or HORN project. This lecture forms part of the Tier 2 Generic and Transferable Skills Curriculum programme and is brought to you by Tracy Ellis on the subject of research leadership. By the end of this session, students should be able to identify barriers to effective team performance, use techniques to effectively handle tension and conflict, describe the importance of balancing the effort associated with managing within a research environment, describe good practice and appropriate tools when managing a research project, understand which factors have to be in place for change to happen, recognise the steps to plan and lead change, describe how a leader uses different types of power to influence others, describe the tools that can be used to analyse the environment you are working in, understand the importance of a vision statement, define how values impact on culture and performance, and understand how exploring your own strengths can support effectiveness. This session will introduce you to the key activities associated with leadership. Your leadership role could be one that comes with management responsibility, or it could involve leading a project or cause that you believe in. The role of research leader is invariably one that involves both of these characteristics. During this session, you will be introduced to tried and tested models and concepts, all of which have supplementary learning resources and key message sheets, which can be found on the programme website at www.onehealthleadership.co.uk. The keywords presented on the word cloud represent the key concepts that will be included in this session. Leading will always involve working with individuals that have differing personalities, working styles, and varied beliefs. This makes the role interesting but sometimes challenging. It will be your responsibility to make sure that team members are able to accept differences and recognise that these differences can add value and complement team synergy if understood, nurtured, and managed effectively. Take a moment to read through the characteristics on the slide associated with an effective team. There are various tools that can be used to analyse what individuals bring to a team. One such tool is Belbin Team Roles. This was developed by Meredith Belbin almost 50 years ago and is still used widely today to help teams understand how individual behaviour can impact on team effectiveness. To use Belbin with a team, each individual member would complete a self-analysis questionnaire which would provide insight into their team role preferences. Once identified, it is useful for each team member to share their findings with others to help fellow team members gain insight into behavioural differences and preferred approaches to performing team tasks. When all individual preferences are plotted on a team profile, like the one shown on the slide, it can provide the team and the leader with a comprehensive picture of team strengths and weaknesses, which can aid activity planning and allocation of project tasks. Take a moment to look at the range of roles that team members adopt depending on their preferred way of working. There are 3 role categories: thinking, action, and people, each containing 3 roles. Teams that have a balanced mix are more likely to be effective. It is useful to decide how the obvious gaps are managed. This could be through development, additional human resource, or shadowing, for example. Tuckman introduced a model showing the stages that teams are likely to move through on their journey to becoming a fully functioning team. This may also involve the adjourning stage for a team that is brought together the purpose of undertaking a specific project. Take a moment to review the diagram and decide which stage is currently the most accurate match for your research team. Your style of management will also impact on team dynamics. Take a moment to explore the Tannenbaum and Schmidt diagram on screen to consider your own management style. Your approach will depend on the context and situation, but it's worth considering where you feel most comfortable and where, if asked, your direct reports would suggest you operate most. Some of the common barriers to effective team working are shown on screen. If you were to use this as a checklist, do you recognise any that are evident with the team you are currently managing? If so, what action could you take to change the situation? If conflict arises, a leader's role is to recognise that it exists and either use the conflict to help bring about a positive outcome or manage the conflict in a way that minimises the impact on positive working relationships and productivity. An important consideration is the consequence of not dealing with the issue. It is usually best practice to make every attempt to address conflict before it escalates. It's unusual for the underlying issues to be resolved if it's not dealt with, even though it sometimes appears that the conflict has subsided. Thomas Kilmann's conflict instrument model, shown on the slide, is a useful tool to use to explore how individuals choose to deal with an interaction with a colleague that they find uncomfortable. The ideal position would be to be both assertive and cooperative to try and find a win-win outcome. The key to resolving conflict is to discover the underlying reasons that could be driving the behaviour that suggests there is conflict. For this discovery to take place, those involved must believe there is benefit in a resolution. Your responsibility will be to help the individuals to understand the underlying motives by encouraging open, respectful dialogue. Some tips to help conflict resolution. Listen, then speak out. Believe it or not, just listening to a team member's issue is the first and most important step to resolving conflict. You should simply listen to all parties involved to completely understand the nature of conflict, and then start troubleshooting solutions. Gather the group. As a leader, you'll need to arrange a meeting with all involved parties to discuss the issue. Give everyone a chance to speak. This is a good opportunity to hear all sides to gain a full understanding of the conflict. Having a group meeting may also expedite a resolution. Be impartial. Don't take sides. In a leadership position, you shouldn't display an opinion that favours one person over another. If you are partial towards one person, try to access the situation from all sides to come up with a fair and reasonable solution. Do not postpone conflict resolution. Address the conflict immediately, otherwise the situation could escalate and could affect employee performance. Just make sure not to address the situation too quickly or without careful consideration, as your decision will directly affect the demeanour and performance of your staff. Broadcast praise. The power of encouragement and motivation can be multiplied when it is spread to recognise those who are modelling the teamwork and cooperation that is desired within any conflict. Try to give suitable models in these instances, because behaviour modelling can be risky if there are elements in the model that are undesirable. Promote teamwork. Encouragement and motivation are powerful. Remind your staff of successful projects that required teamwork to complete. This is one of the most effective conflict resolution techniques and will really make the employees think about the importance of working in a team. The most effective team leader is one who can balance their effort most appropriately between team, task, and individual. This concept of functional leadership was developed by John Adair. Getting this balance right is a skill that can be developed over time. It may be useful for you to consider where you currently exert most energy and why. John Adair's model is based on 3 overlapping circles representing the 3 responsibilities that leaders have: task, team, and the individuals in the team. The reason these 3 overlap is because, firstly, the task can only be performed by the team and not by one person. Secondly, the team can only achieve excellent task performance if all the individuals are fully engaged. And thirdly, the individuals need the task to be sufficiently challenging and the team to be supportive to feel motivated. A fundamental component of the research team leader role is project management. In some ways, this involves managing people for whom you do not have line management responsibility. Leadership skills such as influencing, communicating, and emotional intelligence are essential. The diagram on this slide shows all the stages involved in managing a project. The stages are preparing the project brief, defining roles and responsibilities, deciding on tools and software, assessing stakeholders and how they will be managed, planning communication, assessing risks and how they will be managed, managing the work of the project and the project team, closing the project and evaluating its success. We will explore some of these stages further on the next few slides. If you are working on a project that involves a number of external collaborators, such as a research project, it is important to set project boundaries before you start. Some of those boundaries and questions that you will need to consider are shown on this slide. It is important that you decide on the software that will help you manage your project. This could be specialist, sophisticated software such as Microsoft Project, or something more simple like Trello, which is shown on the slide. Using dedicated software will enable you and your project team to organise all the activities associated with your project, assuming relevant training has been provided to enable members to use it effectively. Early on in the life cycle of a project, it is essential that you spend time analysing your stakeholders. These include all those groups and individuals that can impact on your project, or your project could have an impact on them. This task is best carried out by the whole project team in order to achieve a thorough understanding of the key relationships that exist or need to exist and how these relationships will be managed. Once all stakeholders have been identified, they will be placed on the diagram shown on the slide in the relevant quadrant, and then project team members would decide the most effective way of managing the communications and interactions. This communication management would usually involve 4 different levels of activity: manage closely, keep informed, keep satisfied, or monitor. The stakeholder analysis would then lead to the creation of a communications plan. This would be used to determine a structured approach to managing the flow of information to enable the most effective reporting, consulting, and decision making. The flow process on the slide shows the stages involved. To support the smooth running of a project and minimise the chance of disruption, it is good practice to analyse and manage potential risks. This involves all members of the project team having the opportunity to suggest any factors that might be a potential threat to the project. It works best when team members can all contribute to this exercise to ensure many different perspectives are taken into account. Once potential risks are identified, it is good practice to decide and document how you would mitigate against each of the risks. This enables you to take steps to minimise the risk immediately if possible, or respond swiftly if an identified risk does materialise. It is important to decide how you will record and monitor tasks associated with a project. The simplest approach would be to use a Gantt chart, which can be set up using Microsoft Excel. Whatever you decide to use, it is important to ensure it is shared with your project team and regularly updated to reflect progress. Although evaluation is usually one of the concluding activities, it is essential that the evaluation design is determined at the outset by asking such questions as: how will we know the project has been successful? What specific criteria and associated metrics will be used? How will we collect the data? How will we assess the way the project is managed to enable us to learn from the experience and adopt our approach for future projects? Leadership is the process of creating and sustaining purpose, direction, and intent, such that people become involved to support the purpose. Without leadership, any change is unlikely to get going, and without continual reinforcement through good leadership, a change effort is likely to falter, flag, or come to a stop. Any change that you are attempting to initiate is more likely to be successful if the factors defined in the readiness equation shown on the slide are present. This consists of a clear vision, agreed actionable first steps, the capacity in terms of resource and skill, and a suitable amount of pressure to ensure progression in the right direction. If any one of these factors are not present, it will have a detrimental effect on your ability to implement change. It is important to be mindful that people react to change in different ways. This Kubler-Ross change curve, shown on this slide, presents the emotions that could be present by those involved in change. It is your responsibility to consider the range of emotional states that may be present and how you will use appropriate communication, emotional support or guidance as appropriate. A useful model to follow when implementing change is Kotter's 8-step change model. This involves all the activities that are considered essential at the various stages, such as engaging and enabling and finally implementing and sustaining change. Leaders need to become effective influencers to get things done. Influencing is a process of achieving acceptance of our views by others, for them to feel okay about it, and to remain persuaded and sufficiently enthusiastic to influence other people. It is important to think who you need to influence, the challenges you currently face when influencing, and what you might do to overcome those challenges. Creating your own personal influence map is one way of capturing this. With me in the middle, identify all those groups or individuals that you would like to be able to influence around the outside. Then use the symbols shown to identify the current relationship you have in order to think of approaches you can use to try to regain or build the ability to influence. In your role, you have a number of sources of power available to help you influence. This can be seen in the diagram shown. Each type of power is available to all leaders, but it is important to spend some time considering each type wisely and develop strategies to use them appropriately. Take a moment to review what needs to be in place to influence well. A summary of influencing. Assume all are potential allies. Clarify your goals and priorities. Diagnose the world of the other person. Identify relevant currencies, theirs and yours. Deal with relationships. And influence through give and take. Leadership involves working within a system. Burke and Litwin offers a diagrammatical model to demonstrate the elements of organisational performance and change. The diagram shows how each of the elements connects with the other and the interdependencies involved. This model helps to formulate views on where strengths and weaknesses are present and whether these could be considered as transformational, transactional, or individual or personal. Two very useful tools that can be used to analyse the external context are SWOT and PESTLE. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities and Threats, and is used to analyse the internal context. PESTLE stands for Political, Economic, Social, Technology, Legal and Environmental, and is used to analyse the external context. These tools can encourage you to consider a wide range of factors that can either help or hinder your organisation or project. Once these are known, you have a greater chance of being able to deal with them. A good leader is very clear about their vision, values, and mission. Your vision denotes what you want to accomplish with the aid of your followers. Your mission is the underpinning purpose that drives your actions towards your vision. And your values are the motivational factors that drive your behaviour. The more that mission, vision, and values are aligned, the more likely you are to move towards your vision. Culture describes the operating environment which is present. It evolves over time. It is intangible and is identified by the stories people tell, the operating norms, the symbols that can be seen, and the accepted behaviours. It is wise to assess your culture periodically to check if it is helping you to progress towards your desired vision. If elements are misaligned, there may be drivers that you can put in place to adjust the culture. As culture takes many years to mature, careful planning and consistent reinforcement of key messages that support the desired culture are essential. Your role will involve both leading and managing. This slide shows definitions of leadership and management. Take a moment to think about the difference and how much of your time allocation do you spend leading as opposed to managing. This will depend on the context of your role, the situation you are confronted with, and a degree of personal preference. Over the last 50 years or so, various leadership models have been offered to describe effective approaches to leading and managing people. The visual shown on the slide, which is also available online, aids understanding of the placement of these theories and provides a decision flow process to help you assess your own preferred style in differing situations. Exploring your personal strengths can be very helpful in determining exactly what motivates you and where you are most likely to excel. The benefits can include maximising confidence, having more energy and positivity towards individual goals. Those who work with their strengths are said to be more motivated and look forward to going to work, have a more positive attitude towards and amongst peers, provide better customer service, have more positive, creative and innovative moments, have more energy, maximise their potential, improve their confidence, and are more hopeful for the future. Clifton's Strength Finder is recommended as a tool that can support this. The strengths profile align particularly with executing, influencing relationship building, and strategic thinking. Take a moment to look at the definitions provided for each of the domains measured by the Strengths Finder. In conclusion, leaders who are authentic are more likely to have followers. This involves building legitimacy through honest relationships which are built on ethics, truth, and openness. This is the final slide in this presentation, so thank you for listening. All the resources associated with this session can be found at www.onehealthleadership.co.uk.